Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere warm, loud, and surprisingly full of fish guts. You're not in your cozy bedroom anymore. You're in the sloshing, clattering heart of ancient Rome, but not the polished marble halls or dusty old libraries. No, tonight, you're wedged between a pottery stall and a fishmonger on Via Sebastiaria, literally Fat Street. It smells exactly like it sounds. You're curled on a straw-stuffed mattress that crunches every time you shift. The air tastes of vinegar, roasted goat, and regret. It's just before dawn, and the city is already stretching awake. Bakers clanging their ovens, goats yelling at absolutely nothing, and a chorus of roosters performing like they're paid in applause. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and leave a comment telling me what time and city you're listening from. Always cool to see where you're tuning in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir beneath a scratchy linen sheet, one that smells faintly of olive oil, and yesterday's sweat. The first call of garlic bread, fresh garlic bread, echoes down the alley. Your body protests, but your brain knows better. If you don't open the shop early, old man Decimus next door will pound on your shutters. Like you owe him 3 denarii and a haircut. You shuffle to the creaky wooden door, unlatch it, and let the Roman dawn pour in like honey. Your barber shop, if one could call it that, is little more than a wooden lean-to with a curtain and a bench. On one wall, several shaving blades hang like grumpy little swords. There's a bowl of olive oil with a skin forming over it, and a polished bronze mirror that warps your face like some kind of ancient Instagram filter. There's no sign above the doorway, just a hand-scratched drawing, a bald head, and 2 round eyes like badly boiled eggs. Classy. You toss the faded rag over the barber's chair, which wobbles ominously on uneven legs. It was built by your old mentor, who claimed the design was impossible to fall out of. Which is mostly true, unless the customer is both drunk and very enthusiastic. Outside, the street groans to life. Via Sebastiaria always wakes up like a hangover, messy, loud, and slightly damp. Smoke from fish grills swirls with steam from the public baths. Somewhere someone is yelling at a donkey. The scent? A rich blend of goat droppings, baked clay, and mystery meat. You breathe it in like a sommelier of chaos. You reach for your shaving kit. Blades first, you clean each one in a splash of old wine and vinegar. Roman antiseptic, both brutal and effective. Then comes the honing stone. You drag the blade slowly across it, savoring the scrape. You're not just sharpening metal, you're preparing for battle. You think back to your old teacher who once told you, if a shave doesn't draw a little blood, are you even trying? You've always suspected he said that just to terrify apprentices. It worked. Down the street, a boy selling grapes yells, "Lentulus is coming." Your spine tightens. Lentulus is a regular, a loyal customer. Also, his beard is like a cursed forest. The man's chin could hide a legionnaire. You pour some almond shell powder into a little dish, your homemade aftershave if you're being generous. These days, Etsy would call it artisanal, cruelty-free exfoliant. You call it that sandy stuff. There's a distant crash, someone's dropped a jug, and laughter from the bakery window where that red-haired girl always stands. You wonder, not for the first time, if Romans had crushes the same way modern people do. A glance, a giggle, and suddenly your heart's doing laps. Every tiny noise on this street is history in motion. And you're part of it. Not in the glory of Caesar kind of way, but in the real, greasy, funny-smelling truth of it all. Historians still argue over whether Roman barbers were considered prestigious. Some say they were trusted craftsmen. After all, who else gets to hold a blade to a stranger's throat? Others say, they were just sweaty guys with knives. You're pretty sure you fall somewhere in the middle, and so you tighten the rag over the seat, set your tools in order, and squint into the rising sun. A new day is beginning, a day full of scrapes, rumors, and bad breath. A Roman barber's day. The first footsteps you hear aren't Lentulus, but someone lighter, quicker. You glance up from your sharpening stone and catch a flash of faded leather sandals and a tunic stained with wine. It's Rufus, the ex-legionary who now guards grain, shipments and naps through most of his shift. He ducks into your store like he's fleeing the entire Senate. "Quick trim," he mutters, flopping into your chair with the elegance of a sack of olives. You tilt his chin up. His breath smells like fermented figs. Behind the scraggly beard, his face is carved like an old helmet, dented, scratched, and probably cursed. He squints at your mirror and mumbles, "Make me look like I didn't drink 7 cups of Molson." "Last night," you chuckle softly. "Sure, I'll just take off your whole head." He grunts. It might be laughter. You begin. The blade glides across his jaw, tugging a little where the stubble is defiant. As you work, he tells you about the latest gossip in the grain district, how a magistrate was caught stealing from temple donations and is now mysteriously traveling abroad. You don't ask questions. You just file that tidbit away for your next chat with the fishmonger, who somehow knows more about politics than anyone in the Senate. Outside, the street is louder now. A dog is barking at a cartwheel. Someone is selling garum out of clay pots, fermented fish sauce, the cologne of the people. You can almost taste it in the air. Garum and coffee would be mortal enemies if coffee existed yet. Rufus yawns so hard he nearly bites the blade. "Hold still," you murmur, tapping his forehead like a disobedient scroll. Midway through his shave, you notice something odd, a line of pale scars just beneath his jaw. Not fresh. Old, jagged, like they were stitched by someone holding a needle in one hand and a spear in the other. "Germania," he says before you ask. "Boar took a bite. I bit back." You pause. "Did you win?" He shrugs. "We both walked. So way." He grins, then winces as you catch a patch of chin that clearly didn't want to let go. Scars like that. You realize they carry weight. They're not just memories, they're footnotes in someone's personal history. Maybe that's what your job really is, uncovering those hidden footnotes one layer at a time. You rinse the blade, shake off a few stray hairs, and dust his neck with your powdered mix. It's mostly crushed iris petals and clay, but your clients act like it's worth a fortune. "Same time tomorrow?" he asks. "If the boars don't find you first." He grins and tosses. You a coin that clinks in your tip jar, a cracked amphora once used for olives. He saunters out into the street, muttering something about not enough sleep in this whole empire. As he disappears into the crowd, your next customer arrives. Not walking, but stumbling. Lentulus, in full morning glory, toga wrinkled, cheeks flushed, and breath that could knock a fresco off the wall. He slaps a hand on your doorframe. "My face," he growls, "needs saving." You nod solemnly. "From what?" He waves a hand. "Time, wine, marriage." You guide him into the chair, trying not to gag as he exhales in your direction. His beard looks like it's been fighting windstorms. You've seen more organized shrubbery. You dip your comb into warm oil and begin teasing it into submission. "I dreamed," he says as you work, "that Caesar came to me, told me my destiny was to own a fish sauce empire." You pause. "Did he smell like garum?" Lentulus closes, one eye. "He was garum." You nod as if this makes perfect sense. Ancient dreams are like that. Half madness, half prophecy, mostly nonsense. Still, somewhere in a villa on Palatine Hill, someone's probably paying a priest just to interpret a dream about a crab wearing sandals. As you trim, Lentulus rambles on about a new law he heard rumored, something about taxing beards. Supposedly, the Senate thinks smooth cheeks are more civilized. You're skeptical. You've seen plenty of smooth-cheeked patricians scream at pigeons. Historians still debate, you say more to yourself, whether Roman taxes were really about revenue or just creative punishment. Lentulus doesn't hear you. He's busy inspecting a scratch on his sandal like it contains wisdom. As you finish his beard, neatly squared, softened with rose oil, you catch a rare moment of silence. The street breathes. For half a heartbeat, it's calm. A pigeon flutters past. Someone sneezes. A vendor drops a date pastry and curses in Greek. You pat Lentulus on the shoulder. Done. He squints at the mirror. Still ugly. That'll cost extra. He tosses you a coin anyway, then lurches out shouting something about opening a barber shop for horses. You're not sure if he's joking. You sit for a moment, catching your breath. 2 customers down. 1 soldier, 1 dreamer. Both history, in motion. And you're the quiet observer, the one who trims their edges, listens to their ramblings, and turns their chaos into slightly better-shaped chaos. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot her, a woman approaching, scarf pulled over her head, eyes sharp as a senator's dagger. You sigh. It's time for the local gossip session. But that's for another moment. She doesn't knock. She never does. The curtain rustles and in she glides like a ship entering port without warning, flanked by perfume, indignation, and a faint scent of pickled onions. Her name is Livia, but everyone just calls her Auntie Livia, whether they're related or not. You don't remember a time she wasn't in the neighborhood. She might actually predate the street. Sit, she commands, though it's your chair. You clear your throat. Eyebrows, you ask. She waves a dismissive hand. And chin. There's a party tonight, and I refuse to look like the back end of a goat. You nod, setting to work with the precision of a temple scribe. The wax is warm, and you smooth it across her jawline as she glares at your mirror like it insulted her ancestry. Did you hear, she whispers, lowering her voice in that way that means everyone is going to hear, about the emperor's cousin? You don't? Answer. You've learned it's better to let Livia talk. The truth has a way of being somewhere near her stories, if not actually inside them. They say, she continues, he tried to poison a senator, slipped it right into the garum. Imagine dying with your mouth full of fish guts. Elegant, you murmur, tugging the strip of wax quickly. She doesn't flinch. Veteran, she clicks her tongue. The Senate's pretending it was indigestion, but I've seen indigestion, and it doesn't make your eyes roll back like you saw Neptune himself. You nod. You've seen worse in this very chair. But what I really want to know, she says, squinting at you, is what you think about this new edict. The one about banning purple sandals for anyone under equestrian rank. You raise an eyebrow. Are purple sandals really such a threat to dignity? Yes, she huffs. The baker's son wore a pair last week and strutted around like a peacock in heat. You stifle a laugh. These moments, absurd, intimate, slightly sticky, are the rhythm of your trade. Livia, for all her sharpness, trusts you. In a world of gossip and political backstabbing, your chair is one of the few places where people can say things like, I'm thinking of poisoning my neighbor's fig tree, and not be reported. It's what makes the job complicated, because people tell barbers everything. Secrets, dreams, crimes. Half of Rome's scandals likely passed through a shaving bowl at some point. Historians still argue over whether Roman barbers served as informal intelligence hubs. Were they just chatterboxes with scissors, or subtle spies with great hair? You hold that thought as Livia asks for a spritz of your homemade perfume, rose petals, vinegar, and a few drops of honey. She inhales it like it's Chanel No. 5. Oh, that's divine, she sighs. Reminds me of my second husband, before he ran off with a flute girl from Naples. You don't ask how many husbands she's had. You're not that brave. She stands, dabs at her jaw with a corner of her shawl, and gives you a silver coin, generous for eyebrow maintenance and national gossip. As she exits, she winks. If a man in a green toga comes asking questions, I've gone to visit my cousin in Ostia. You make a note to pretend not to know her later. Moments after she leaves, the air shifts, the kind of shift that only comes with silence. No yelling, no arguing, just a calm that settles on the stall like dust on a scroll. And then, something. Odd, a boy, young, barefoot, tunic too big. He peers around the curtain, eyes darting like a cornered mouse. Can I get a haircut? He whispers. You study him. He's not from around here. His accent's off. His posture, off. And he's sweating more than Rome on festival day. You nod slowly, gesturing to the chair. He climbs up, looking around like he's expecting someone to drag him back out by the ear. You don't ask questions yet, just dip your comb in oil and begin to tame his tangled curls. Short, he says quickly. Very short. You glance at him in the mirror. He won't meet your eyes. You've seen this before, the urgency, the panic. Someone trying to disappear. Runaway slave? Possible. Or maybe someone ducking a bad debt, a bad marriage, or a worse. Family. As you trim, he shifts constantly. His foot taps, his fingers twitch. You hear the cart outside roll past, clattering over stones, but the sound barely registers over the tension in your chair. Finally, you speak. You hiding from someone? His eyes flash up. He opens his mouth to deny it, then stops. Can you cut it different? He asks instead. Make it unrecognizable. You nod. You know how. A little off the top. A part on the other side. A jagged edge, intentional but messy. A whole new boy. You pause halfway through. What's your name? He hesitates. Marius. You wait a beat. No, it's not. He swallows. It is now. Fair enough. As you finish, he reaches into the folds of his tunic and produces a coin. Not silver, bronze, light. Faintly sticky. You take it. Stay safe, Marius. He hops down and disappears into the street. Not running, just fading. You sigh, 3 customers before midday. A drunk soldier, a royal scandal delivery system, and a ghost boy. The sun is higher now. Your oil's heating up in the bowl. The street smells of fish sauce, dust, and warm. Fred, it's not glamorous, it's not noble. But this is Rome, and you're the one holding the blade. You barely have time to rinse the last of the runaway's hair from your apron when you hear it. That unmistakable clack, clack, clack of someone overdressed walking far too confidently on uneven cobblestones. Here he comes. Gaius Tertinius Crispus. Name longer than your average scroll. Ego even longer. He's not a senator, but he likes to stand near them at parties. He enters with the poise of a man whose sandals were polished by slaves and whose eyebrows were shaped by destiny. Salutations, Tunsor, he says, flashing a theatrical smile. That nearly blinds you. You force a grin. Always a pleasure, sir. He nods, graciously accepting your presence. Today I need something imperial. You pause. Imperial? He gestures to his face like he's unwrapping a sacred relic. The hairstyle of Augustus, from that statue in the Forum. You've seen it. You have. Of course you have. The Forum Augustus houses a 10-foot marble rendering of the first emperor, hair parted, curled and draped like someone styled it underwater. It's majestic, yes, on marble. On living people, though, not so much. Still, you nod. Of course. The divinely sanctioned wave, he beams. Exactly. I have a dinner tonight with a woman whose family claims descent from Minerva. I need hair that says I too am descended from gods. You resist the urge to say, you might need a new nose for that, and instead reach for your warm oil and finest comb. As you start sectioning his hair, he launches into a monologue about Roman virtue, dinner seating arrangements, and how wearing too much perfume is definitely a sign of Greek influence. You listen, nodding occasionally, but most of your energy goes into shaping his thinning curls into something resembling marble waves. It's a challenge, especially since he keeps tilting his head to check the mirror. There, he says suddenly, pointing. That side's thinner. You must compensate. You lean in, examining. That's just your skull, sir. He frowns. Well, tell it to behave. You do your best. A little wax, a bit of strategic teasing, a few prayers to Venus. In the end, the result is not bad. You've created something that vaguely resembles a Roman bust. If the bust had spent the night sweating in a tavern, he preens, inspecting from every angle. Excellent, you've outdone yourself. Just doing my civic duty, you reply. He stands, brushes an invisible speck from his toga, and hands you a coin. It's heavy, generous, of course, it's not his money. Now, he says, turning back with a wink, if anyone asks, tell them I came in looking like Trajan. You nod solemnly, and left looking like Apollo. He disappears into the midday, crowd like a man auditioning to be emperor. You're not sure if you admire him or want to lock your curtain for the rest of the day. You sit for a moment, the scent of his rose oil cologne still hanging in the stall. It's thick, cloying, and somehow judgmental. You cough, then you laugh. Out loud, alone. Because that's the thing about days like this, you never know who's going to walk in. A soldier with battlefield scars, a frightened boy on the run, a noble with dreams of immortality sculpted into his scalp. Historians still debate whether the Roman ideal of beauty was based more on Greek statuary or homegrown styles. You've decided it was probably whatever looked good under poor lighting and enough olive oil. Just as you're about to close your eyes for a quick break, a familiar voice calls from outside. Oh good, you're not dead. It's Flavia, one of your favorites. A housewife with 5 kids, a permanent smudge of flour on her cheek, and more secrets than the Vestal virgins. She enters like a gust of wind, carrying a basket, a jug, and a tone of voice that suggests the Emperor himself is late to dinner. "Need my brows done and don't give me that look," she says before you've even turned. You gesture to the chair. "It's yours, and for the record, it was a look of deep admiration." She snorts and sits. "Liar." You begin applying the wax, and she launches into a story involving her neighbor, a goat, and a scandalous scroll that was definitely not supposed to be read by children. You don't catch all of it. There's some frantic hand gestures and a lot of references to someone named Crispus that may or may not be the same man you just styled. You apply the strip. "Ready? Born ready." Rip, she doesn't flinch. "Pain is temporary," she says, "but bad brows are forever." She tells you about the dinner party she's planning tonight, about which dish she's going to accidentally burn to get her mother-in-law to leave early, about how her youngest son tried to sell a dead beetle to the fishmonger, claiming it was sacred to Pluto. Somehow, in between the waxing, the gossip, and the threats of petty vengeance, you start to feel something strange. Peace. The sounds of the street fade a bit. The oil is warm. Your tools are clean. The stories flow around you like the Tiber at dusk. This isn't just a haircut, you realize. It's theater, therapy, confessional. And you? You're the one who listens, who trims, who sees people for exactly who they are, then helps them look like someone slightly better. As Flavia rises, she gives you a peach from her basket. "For your trouble." You smile. "You mean my silence?" She winks. "You know me so well." You do, more than you probably should. And as she vanishes into the swirl of sun and voices, you peel the peach slowly and think, 3 down, 9 more to go, and the day isn't even half over. You barely have time to finish your peach when the shouting starts. It begins with a distant shriek, sharp enough to slice through the midday hum. Then comes the unmistakable sound of something wet being slapped, violently, against a solid surface. And then, of course, the yelling. You step just outside the curtain, shielding your eyes from the harsh Roman sun. There, smack in the middle of the fish market across the street, is a full-on spectacle. 2 women locked in a screaming match, flailing arms, and at least one red snapper being wielded like a weapon. You recognize both instantly. On the left, Calpurnia, the baker's wife, known for her excellent focaccia and her tendency to interpret minor slights as full-scale diplomatic betrayals. On the right, Junia, the widow who recently moved into the 3rd-floor apartment with the suspiciously quiet cat. You sigh. "This was inevitable. He's my husband," Calpurnia screeches, pointing the fish like a divine accusation. "He wasn't your husband last week," Junia roars back, brandishing a half-eaten mackerel. It's not exactly Cicero in the Forum, but it's just as theatrical. You shake your head, turning to head back inside when a hand grabs your arm. It's Flavia again, peeking from behind the fabric of your curtain like a child sneaking sweets. "You're missing the best part," she whispers. "I think I've seen this one," you reply. "Didn't they do a similar act during Saturnalia?" She snickers. "Oh no, that was about the goat. This is about the neighbor's nephew. Much messier. Before you can ask for clarification, because of course there's a neighbor's nephew, a fish goes flying. It arcs through the air like some greasy, floppy javelin and smacks clean against the wall of your stall. You blink. "Well," Flavia says, deadpan, "that's new." You sigh and retrieve a rag to wipe down your poor curtain, now scented with the perfume of insulted tilapia. The crowd hoots. Someone places bets. Someone else suggests they wrestle in olive oil for fairness. A vendor tries to sell snacks. Rome. Eventually, a patrolman ambles over. Not running, ambling. He's chewing something, probably olives. He raises an eyebrow, says something you can't hear, and the 2 women suddenly remember their dignity. Or maybe they just remember they're standing in fermented fish water. The crowd disperses. The curtain is still damp. You sit back down, shaking your head. Your next customer appears silently, so silently in fact that you jump when you see him already seated. It's Lucius, a regular, skinny, solemn, smells like scrolls. He works at a records office and talks as if every word is charged per syllable. He's here for a beard trim. You start, careful with the scissors, and wait for him to speak. It takes several snips before he does. I was in the Temple of Saturn yesterday. He murmurs. Working on archives, you nod. They found another list, buried behind some broken amphorae from the reign of Claudius. Another snip. It includes Barber names. You pause. Really? Yes. A census log. Barber names. Yours. Isn't on it, obviously. You're too alive. Thank you, he shrugs. Some had odd names. One was called Scalpus the Bold. Another, Milo of the Sudden Snip. You grin. Sounds like a wrestler. Another pause. Lucius clears his throat. There was also mention of a barber priest. You raise your eyebrows. Barber and priest, he nods. Historians still debate what that meant. Could have been a priest who shaved heads for initiation rituals, or a barber who preached while trimming. You chuckle. I've been accused of worse. As you finish trimming, Lucius glances at the crowd still buzzing outside. People think Rome is all monuments and marble, he says. But it's this, the shouting, the fish, the absurdity. You nod. That's where the real empire lives. He stands, flicks a coin onto the tray, and nods. Until next time. Stay away from airborne seafood, you call after him. The sun begins to dip slightly, painting the cobblestones gold. The fish stain on your curtain is drying into something abstract and vaguely threatening. You make a mental note to clean it. Eventually. Just as you turn to tidy up, a soft voice calls out. Excuse me. A man steps in. Older, wrapped in a patched cloak, beard grey and wild like storm clouds. One eye milky with age, the other sharp. I don't have money, he says, but I'd like a shave. You study him. Something in the way he stands, tall, defiant despite the dirt and ragged sleeves, tells you this isn't just a random beggar. You gesture to the chair. He nods and sits, letting out a quiet sigh like he's been holding his breath for years. As you begin to work, he says, I fought in Dacia. You pause. Under Trajan? He nods. That was a lifetime ago. Maybe two. You keep shaving. Gentle strokes. I remember the snow, he says softly. We were in a valley. The river froze in our helmets. I haven't seen snow since. You glance at the worn boots, the cracked hands. Do you miss it? He smiles. Only when I sleep. The shave continues in silence. By the time you're done, the old soldier looks years younger. Still tired, still worn, but seen. He rises slowly, places a bronze button on the counter and says, Not payment, just thanks. You watch him. Go outside, the light has shifted. The heat has softened. The street breathes again, and you're still holding the blade. It starts with the softest knock you've ever heard. Not the dramatic slap of a senator's sandal or the impatient rattle of a fishwife's basket. No, this one is hesitant. 2 quick taps. Then silence. You pause mid-rinse, glance toward the curtain. Nothing. Another tap. Quieter. You pull the fabric aside slowly. There's a boy standing there, 10, maybe 11, skinny as a clothesline, bare feet dusted with dirt, eyes too wide for a face so young. His tunic hangs like it belonged to a much larger child, and it's been mended so many times it looks more thread than cloth. Can I get a haircut? He asks, voice barely above a whisper. You hesitate. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days. Of course, you say gently. Come in. He steps inside like the floor might fall away. You notice a mark on his ankle, raw red rubbed through, a shackle mark. You know it immediately. Slavery in Rome wasn't hidden. It was worn, announced, registered. But sometimes they ran. And when they ran, they came to people like you. Not to confess. To vanish. You pretend not to notice the mark. What's your name? You ask. He swallows. Titus. You wait a beat. No, he admits quietly. It's not. You nod. Fair enough. What would you like it to be? He hesitates, then whispers, Marcellus. All right, Marcellus, you say. Let's get to work. You begin combing through his tangled curls, slow and careful. The comb catches on a knot the size of a walnut. He flinches. You loosen it with oil. The silence stretches. Then he asks, if someone's looking for me. You won't say anything, right? You meet his gaze in the mirror. This stall sees a lot. It doesn't talk. He nods. One shaky breath in. One out. You work. The haircut isn't just about changing his look. It's about erasing something, replacing it with possibility. You cut a little shorter than usual, change the part, roughen the edges. You've done it before, though you never advertise the service. Outside, the street continues as if nothing is happening. That's the Roman gift. Chaos wrapped in normalcy. A woman shouts about rotten figs. A vendor drops a jar. Life barrels forward, while in your tiny stall, a boy is being reborn. You're fast, he says. You're small, you reply. He almost laughs. You finish with a dab of oil, the kind you save for sensitive scalps. As you wipe the stray hairs from his neck, you speak low. You have family. He shakes his head. Friends? He hesitates, then nods. Just once. Good, you say. You'll need them. He reaches into his tunic and produces a single coin, so worn it looks like a prayer token. He holds it out, hand trembling. You push it back toward him. Keep it, for bread. He stares at you, trying to decide whether to be grateful or proud. You let him be both. Before he leaves, you hand him a bit of cloth, clean, smelling faintly of rosemary. Wrap your ankle, you say. He nods, eyes shining. And then he's gone back into the crowd. You sit for a long while after that, the chair still warm, the room still holding his silence. Historians still debate the exact number of slaves in Rome, whether it was a third of the population or more. But they rarely write about the moments like this, quiet, human, inconvenient. The stories that don't get chiseled into stone. You shake yourself from the weight of it and glance outside. The sun is hanging lower now, the light thickening like syrup. Someone singing, badly. A lute out of tune accompanies a merchant, hawking knockoff amulets. You take a sip of water and lean back, and then she appears. Velia. You smell her before you see her. Jasmine and burnt citrus, a perfume she probably invented herself just to stay memorable. She's not just a customer, she's a presence. Somewhere between performance artist and high-end rumor engine, she sweeps into the stall in a blur of silk and dramatic sighing. My darling, she says, flopping into the chair like a queen who's exhausted by admiration. Make me beautiful. You already are, you reply automatically. She waves a hand. I know, I want to be more beautiful. Like divine punishment. You chuckle. Hair trim or apocalypse wave? Let's do both. You set to work, careful not to tangle her elaborate twists. She starts talking immediately. There's a senator, she begins, and he has absolutely no idea I'm in love with his wife. You raise an eyebrow. Have you told her? I sent her a poem. And she thought it was from him. You pause. That's deeply Roman of you. She beams. Isn't it? You trim, shape, blend. She tells you about her latest failed engagement, her new dog, which she insists is half jackal, and her latest business venture, scented scrolls. Scented scrolls? Yes, you read them and they smell like victory, or heartbreak, or roasted dates, depending on the theme. You laugh. Does heartbreak smell like roasted dates? Only if you're doing it right. By the time you finish her hair, she looks like a goddess who's just gotten out of bed and doesn't care what you think. Perfect. She kisses you on the cheek, air kisses, of course, and floats out into the evening like a cloud of jasmine and scandal. You exhale. The day's getting old, your hands are tired, but the street is still awake, still hungry for stories. And you're still holding the blade. At last, a pause, not a silence. Rome doesn't do silence, but a lull. The sun has begun to dip, casting long golden slants across the cobblestones like spilled honey. The street's shout has faded into something softer, merchants haggling, in lower tones, sandals shuffling instead of stomping, the occasional laugh carried on a breeze. You slide a wooden shutter halfway down and stretch your arms until your back pops. You've earned a break, a short one. The razors can wait, the soap can cool. You wipe your hands on your apron, grab the clay jug of cheap wine you keep tucked under the bench, and step into the alley behind the shop, the unofficial break room. of the Via Sebatiaria Barber Consortium. 3 others are already there, lounging on overturned crates and chunks of broken column. Cassius, who always smells faintly of goat, Felix, who wears more jewelry than most of his clients, and old Tarquin, who claims to have once trimmed the beard of a man who tried to kill Caligula. He mentions this at least twice a week. Look who finally emerged from his shrine of vanity, Cassius says, lifting a crust of bread in salute. You still alive in there? Felix asks, balancing a grape on his knife tip. Barely, you reply, dropping onto a crate. I've had a noble, a runaway, and a woman who may or may not be trying to seduce a senator's wife through scented parchment. Ah, Tarquin says, sipping from his cup. The classics. You pour yourself a splash of wine. It's lukewarm, a little gritty, possibly fermented by accident. But it's drinkable. Probably. Any good scandal today? Felix asks, idly polishing his shears. You shrug. Fish fight in the market. Love triangle. Flying trout. Cassius whistles. Should have bet on that. You all chuckle, and for a moment you allow yourself to relax. The alley smells like wine, sweat, and rose oil. The air hums with stories. You've all been cutting, shaving, and listening since sunrise. It's a strange kind of priesthood. No temples, but a steady congregation. Tarquin leans forward. Heard a whisper today, he says, voice lowered, though no one's around. Someone got caught selling fake beauty licenses. You blink. Fake what? Licenses. The little medallions they started handing out after the last census to certify who can work as a public stylist. He snorts. As if Augustus himself needs to approve our shears. Felix laughs. What are they going to do next? Tax mustaches? They tried once, Tarquin mutters. Didn't last. You sip your wine and glance at the others. There's something comforting about this ridiculous circle. You all serve the same street, the same chaos, rivals maybe, but only slightly. Mostly you're just survivors of a profession that requires the dexterity of a surgeon, the charm of a priest, and the patience of a librarian sorting scrolls written in donkey. Cassius raises his cup. To the forgotten artists, you all tap clay cups together. The sound is small but honest. Tarquin leans back, his voice soft now. Ever think we'll get remembered? Felix grins. Maybe if we accidentally decapitate a consul. UK. Shake your head. Or if someone writes about us. Who'd want to read about barbers? Cassius says, half laughing. You pause, maybe someone would. Historians still argue whether tradesmen in ancient Rome were considered full citizens of cultural value or simply background noise in the empire's great theater. But no one can deny. That hair grows, stubble returns, and people will always need someone to hold the blade. You're the background, the hum, the invisible rhythm. And that's enough. A shout from the main street interrupts your piece. Cassius, a voice yells. Your apprentice set someone's ear on fire. Cassius groans, chugs the rest of his wine and stumbles out of the alley. Felix and Tarquin chuckle, rising with creaky joints and colorful curses. The break is over. You linger for one more moment, letting the breeze cool your cheeks, and then rise too. Back to the stall, back to the curtain, back to the tools and the talk. Rome doesn't pause, neither do you. You slip behind the curtain just as your next customer appears, a young couple, holding hands, arguing about whether he should get his eyebrows shaped for their engagement dinner. You smile, another story, another face, and as always, you're still holding the blade. It starts, as most things do on Via Sebatiaria, with shouting, loud, impolite shouting, the kind of shouting that draws people in like seagulls to spilled wine. You're halfway through trimming a teenager's sideburns. He insists they'll help him look older for his military exam. When the first scream rings out, you think I don't know. You sigh. Hold still, you murmur to the boy who's now frozen mid-blink, eyes darting toward the curtain. The shouting draws closer. I saw you, outside the olive press, with her. A second voice now, higher pitched, fast, defensive. It wasn't like that. She slipped on a grape. She just fell into my arms. You place your comb down. Here we go again. You part the curtain and poke your head out. It's Publius and Claudia. Again, Publius, son of the fish seller, with hair like a mop that's never met soap. Claudia, daughter of the seamstress, sharp-tongued and sharp-elbowed. They've been breaking up and making up in public for at least 3 months, sometimes multiple times in the same day. But today? Today feels different. Today Claudia is holding a shoe, not a sandal, not a dainty slipper, a proper, full-strapped, iron-buckled marching boot, probably Publius's, definitely aimed at his head. He ducks just in time. It sails through the air and lands with a thud against the side of your stall. Your curtain flutters. You step out, arms crossed. Publius, you say calmly. He freezes. High shoes stay on feet. Yes, sir. Claudia's cheeks are red, her hair sticking to her temples in damp fury. He kissed her hand, she yells, as if that alone is grounds for exile. Publius stammers, it was a handshake with flair. A crowd has gathered. Again. Rome doesn't do privacy. It does audience participation. Someone from the bakery is offering honey cakes while the show lasts. Someone else starts humming a tragic love song from a recent stage play. It's off-key but thematically appropriate. You sigh. Claudia, Publius, either step inside and get a haircut while you scream at each other, or take this to the public baths where arguments echo better. They look at each other. There's a pause, a tiny one. Then Claudia does something unexpected. She bursts into tears, not the staged, dramatic sniffles of a performer, but real, shuddering, tired sobs. She drops the other boot. It lands harmlessly on the stones. The crowd quiets. Publius looks panicked. He reaches out. She flinches. He pulls back. You step forward, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Inside, you say. Both of you. They follow, heads bowed, into the calm shadow of your stall. You sit them down side by side, one on the stool, one on the wooden chest. You offer a towel which Claudia uses to wipe her face. I don't care if you're in love, you begin, or if you're trying to write a play with live weapons. Publius looks like he wants to disappear. But this street, you continue, already smells like mackerel. It does not need more drama. Claudia lets out a short laugh, despite herself. Publius chuckles nervously. You lean against the wall. Talk, no yelling, no footwear, or I swear by Jupiter's sandals I'll make you both bald. They talk, slowly, tentatively. You pretend to polish your shears while listening, but you're really just giving them space. Turns out, the woman in question was older, his mother's friend, in fact. There was a grape, there was a fall, and apparently there was a slap, but it landed on someone else. Eventually, Claudia exhales and looks at you. Can you fix his hair? He looks like a runaway broom. You grin. I'll try. Publius takes the chair and you start trimming. Claudia watches, arms crossed, eyes softening. As you snip, you tell them about another couple from your youth who used to argue over which god had better abs. They married, opened a bakery. Now they argue over pastry glazes. Love, you say, is mostly just finding someone whose nonsense you can tolerate. Claudia raises an eyebrow. And whose boots you can dodge. You nod. Especially that, when you finish, Publius looks a little less like a fishmonger's mop and a little more like a young man trying to grow up too fast. Claudia tilts her head. Better. They leave together, not holding hands, but not throwing things either. It's progress. The crowd outside has already moved on to the next distraction. Someone dropped a watermelon, and now small children are debating whether it's an omen. You return to your seat, exhale, and pick up your shears again. Historians still argue about the role barbers played in Roman society. But here's what they forget. Sometimes you don't just fix beards. Sometimes you fix the silence between two people. And that might be the most delicate cut of all. The first drop hits your wrist with the precision of an omen. You glance up. The sky has been flirting with trouble all afternoon. Thick clouds gathering like a Senate session before a scandal. You smell it now too. That sharp scent of wet dust, old tiles, and whatever the neighbor's goat left behind earlier. The boy in your chair blinks. Is that rain? You nod slowly. Not yet, but it's thinking about it. It doesn't take long for thinking to become action. The downpour hits. Like a riot, no warning, no easing in. Just a solid whump of water as the heavens open and drench the street in seconds. Within moments, the dusty road becomes a stream, and your curtain flaps wildly in the wind like a frightened toga. You leap up, dragging the curtain shut, pulling your customer inside fully before the chair gets baptized. The boy stumbles, his tunic instantly soaked. You toss him a towel and grab the wax bowl off the shelf, just in time. Plop. Something wet and suspicious lands in the second bowl. You stare, it's water, at least mostly, but the color is creamy. You look up, the leak. The back corner of the roof, right over your supplies. You forgot to wedge the extra tile into place last week. It's too late now. The water's already dribbling through a crack and landing squarely in your jar of wax, turning it into a sad little soup. You sigh, holding the ruined mixture like a failed cake. The boy in your chair giggles. Is that your special blend? You glance at him. Only if you want curls that smell like mold and regret. The rain intensifies. Outside, the street becomes chaos. Vendors shout to save their carts. A chicken darts past your door like it's fleeing a prophecy. Somewhere someone curses Neptune for having a bad day, and then suddenly you're not alone. People start showing up, not for shaves, not for trims, but for shelter. A fruit seller, soaked to the bone, holding a basket of rapidly fermenting grapes. A messenger boy with soggy scrolls stuffed under his tunic. An old man in a fancy cloak that's now see-through. They crowd into your tiny stall like rats fleeing a sinking ship. No one speaks at first. They just drip, quietly, with impressive coordination. Welcome, you say dryly, to the Via Sebastiaria Spa. Someone chuckles. You pass around towels, mostly rags really, and offer a jar of warm water for warming hands. You'd light a lamp, but with the curtain pulled tight and the humidity rising, you'd be boiling everyone alive in 5 minutes. Instead, you sit down on your stool, water squishing in your sandals, and wait. And that's when it begins. The talking. The fruit seller starts it. She sighs deeply, dramatically, and says, I told my daughter this morning, today's going to be cursed. The old man raises an eyebrow. Cursed how? She left the oil lamp burning. The small one. You know what that means. Everyone. But you nod solemnly. You don't, but you've learned not to interrupt ancient superstition rituals in progress. The messenger boy pipes up. I once knew a guy who left the lamp burning, and 3 days later he sneezed during a Senate vote and was exiled. Coincidence, says the fruit seller, or omen, says the old man. You lean back, enjoying the absurdity. It always happens this way. Rain brings people together, in forums, in homes, and in barber stalls. It's as if the water washes away the rules. Everyone is wet, everyone is equal, and everyone is convinced something weird is going to happen. Historians still debate whether Romans viewed weather as divine punishment, divine blessing, or just a chance to avoid work. Most likely, all three. Your roof drips steadily. The wax bowl bubbles a little. The boy whose haircut was interrupted starts telling a story about a dog who speaks Greek. No one interrupts. You feel something shift, not just the crowd. You. This tiny stall, this half shelter, half confessional, is doing what no marble column ever could. It's holding people. In their mess, in their silence, in their weird, wet, half-laughing humanity, you stand and offer the old man a dry seat. He waves you off. I haven't been this damp since the Tiber flooded in '07. You sure it was the Tiber? Someone asks, could have just been your roof. He grins. Same difference. Eventually the rain lessens. Not much, but enough. The fruit seller ventures out first, the messenger boy next. The rest trickle out one by one like water through the city drains. The stall empties. You're left with the boy again, still half-trimmed. Should I come back tomorrow? He asks. You shake your head, pull out a new blade, and finish the cut in silence, the soft rhythm of snipping the only sound left, besides the fading drizzle. Outside, the street glistens. The world smells fresh, alive, chaotic. And inside your little corner of Rome, something else lingers. Stillness, peace, a moment between raindrops, and once again, you're still holding the blade. He shows up just as you're wringing out your curtain. You know the type before you even see his face. The shuffle of stiff sandals, the heavy exhale of someone who believes breathing loudly is an expression of authority, and, of course, the jingle. That awful smug little jingle of coins in a pouch tied just a bit too tightly. You turn and there he is, Marcus Vibius Lento, tax collector, middle-aged, balding like a peeled apple, and wearing a tunic so precisely pressed you'd think he never sat down. The man's belt is tighter than his smile, and both look like they're ready to snap. He steps into your stall like he owns the bricks under your feet. You offer him the barber's chair. He doesn't sit. Not yet. You've had a busy week, he says, tone as dry as the raisins in your pantry. Rome stays hairy, you reply, reaching for your razor set. Even in the rain. He doesn't laugh. He rarely does. You suspect he thinks laughter. Here's a taxable event. I'm here, he says, to perform a civic review. You glance toward your empty tip jar. Well, don't expect fireworks. I've had reports, he continues, ignoring your attempt at humor, that this establishment may not be reflecting its full revenue in the temple ledgers. You blink. Are we counting gossip as income now? Donations, tips, bartered goods? He sniffs. A peach here, a song there, a suspiciously shiny apple once offered to a passing vestal, all part of the taxable life of a Roman citizen. You'd pause your motions. You're here to tax a peach? It was very ripe. You exhale through your nose, motion to the chair. Sit. Let me trim that very untaxed nose hair before it files a rebellion. To your surprise, he does. Slowly, deliberately, as if he's granting you a favor. As you begin snipping, he continues. There's been discussion, he says, of a standard grooming fee for all citizens entering the forum. Groomed men are more agreeable, less likely to riot. Unless the grooming is the cause of the riot, you murmur. He ignores you. We're considering a grooming license for all barbers. Official scroll, bronze seal, 50 sestertii up front. You accidentally snip a little too close. He jerks. 50, you say innocently. Does the seal double as a weapon? You could hang it near your mirror, impress clients. I'd rather hang a snake, you reply, straightening his ear. You may need to reconsider your tone, he says. Regulations are changing. You lean in, trimming his sideburns with deliberate grace. You want to tax me, fine, but don't pretend it's for my benefit. He snorts. You switch to a smaller blade. Let me ask you something, Marcus. He grunts. When's the last time someone said thank you to you? He blinks. What? You do a job no one likes. You knock on doors, count chickens, chase ghosts in the ledger. People fear you, sure. But do they ever thank you? He's silent. You pause. Do you even remember why you started doing this? He looks into the bronze mirror. For a moment, he's just a man again. Tired, a little lonely, wearing a badge that doesn't mean as much as it used to. No, he says softly. I don't. You finish trimming, run a dab of oil behind his ears and wipe his neck clean. There, you say. You look like someone people might want to listen to, not avoid. He rises slowly, looks at himself, then at you. I should fine you. You still can. He pulls a coin from his pouch. Silver. Legitimate. He presses it into your hand. This never happened, he mutters, stepping out into the light. As he disappears down the road, a chicken scampers after him. You imagine it's demanding its tax exemption. You lean back against the bench and toss the coin once in the air. Historians still debate whether Roman tax collectors were agents of order or instruments of exploitation, but they rarely talk about the ones who just wanted a clean shave and 5 minutes without being cursed at. Outside, the street is alive again. Vendors hauling out dry wares, children jumping puddles, a dog barking at its own tail like it owes him money. You wipe down your blade and once again you're still holding it. You've just finished sweeping the last of the storm-wet clippings into a clay jar when you hear the tapping, light, irregular, like a pebble skipping across stone. You look up. He stands at the edge of your stall, half shadow, half skeleton. A tunic hangs off his frame like laundry forgotten in the rain. His beard is a storm cloud of white and grey, wild and windblown, and his eyes are still sharp, too sharp for someone so worn thin. Need a shave, he rasps. You nod and gesture to the chair. He moves like dust caught in a breeze, leaning on a knotted cane made from what looks like driftwood, or a stolen table. Leg? As he sits, The stool creaks like it's remembering every back it's ever supported. "Don't have coin," he mutters, "but I've got stories." You smile. You're in luck. That's the local currency. He settles in, chin lifted, eyes closed. You begin. Your blade slides gently over the wiry hairs of his jaw, slicing through time. He smells like old parchment, campfire smoke and fennel. Not unpleasant, just from another century. "You know Dacia," he says, eyes still shut. You nod, though he can't see it. "Fought there, long ago, under Trajan." A pause. Not for effect, just age. "Snow came early that year. Froze the spears right in our hands. They sent us to flank a village. Thought it was empty." He exhales, long and slow. "It wasn't. You keep shaving." "I lost a toe. 2 friends. And something else. Can't remember what, but I feel it missing." The blade dips down his neck. "You're careful. This man is made of parchment and memory. They don't tell you when you sign up for glory," he mutters, "that it never leaves you. The sound of metal, the stink of fear. You carry it even when no one else remembers." You nod. Words wouldn't help here. Historians still argue whether Trajan's Dacian campaigns were acts of Roman greatness or imperial greed. They tally. Legions count roads, measure the spoils, but they don't count the ghosts that sit in barber chairs, asking to look just a little cleaner before vanishing again. He opens one eye. "You believe me?" He asks. "I believe the scar on your neck," you reply. He smiles, just slightly. "Good." You rinse the blade and wipe his face gently. Under the beard is a map, wrinkles drawn from decades of sun, wind, and regret, but also pride. You hand him a mirror. He laughs, a sound like gravel rolling down a hill. "I don't look like a soldier," he says. "You look like a man who survived being one." He leans forward, creaking with the effort, and reaches into his tunic. He pulls out a button, bronze, smoothed by years. He sets it gently on your bench. "It belonged to a friend," he says. "He didn't come back. I don't need it anymore." You place your hand over it, not to take it, just to accept it. He rises slowly, as if the chair wants to keep him there. As he turns to leave, you ask, "What's your name?" He pauses. "Flavius." Then he's gone, just like that. Outside, the air is dry again. The world smells like bread baking and hearth smoke. The day is beginning to wind down. You place the button on the shelf above your tools. It rests there now, quiet and solid, like a coin that buys nothing, but means everything. Someone passes your stall and peeks in. Still open, you nod always, and once again you're still holding the blade. The next customer doesn't walk in. She glides, a swirl of silk and scent, toes barely kissing the ground. The kind of woman who could wear a potato sack and make it look like imported Alexandrian linen. Her name is Alia, but the street knows her by many others. The whisper pot, lady of herbs, that one who knows too much. You call her Elia. She smiles like she knows what you dreamed last night. "I need a trim," she says, easing into your chair like a cat claiming a windowsill. "And a little quiet." You nod. No questions. You reach for your tools. Scissors instead of blade today. Her hair falls in gentle coils like dark ivy curling around forgotten ruins. You begin. The scent she wears is hard to pin down. Basil? Mint? Something floral, yes, but there's also a sharp edge. Vinegar, maybe. Like a salad dressing and a threat. She closes her eyes. "I heard," she says softly, "that someone bribed a census clerk to list their goat as a voting citizen. You keep cutting. They named it Claudius," she continues. "Apparently, it voted against a grain tax. You raise an eyebrow but say nothing." She smiles. No sense of humor, these officials. Snip. You let the silence stretch. She always fills it eventually. "You know about the baker's wife?" she whispers. "Which one?" "The one who died. Her husband's toga red so the gods would notice his prayers faster." You pause. "Did it work?" "He won a free chicken at the baths. She thinks it's connected." You chuckle under your breath. "Divine poultry." She opens one eye. "Don't mock. I once prayed to Venus for a lover and got 3 at once. One was literate. Dangerous. Very. Snip. She shifts, suddenly serious. I came across a scroll this morning, left in the shrine near the aqueduct, tied with yellow ribbon. Smelled like almonds. You glance at her in the mirror. Poison? Or poetry? Hard to say. I didn't open it. Yet. You're not sure whether she's joking. Elia deals in secrets. She doesn't collect them so much as grow them, like herbs in cracked pots behind her window. People bring her rumors like gifts. She never asks. She just waits. And somehow they come. She once told you the high priest's dog barked at her 3 times in a row, and that was all she needed to know about the future of wine prices. Historians still argue whether women like Elia were truly wise women, or just extremely observant gossips. But when you need a cure for a cold, a truth about your neighbor, or a love potion that only works if it's Tuesday, Elia's the one they whisper for. You ever want to disappear? She asks suddenly. You pause. Not lately. I do, every week. Just a little. Where would you go? She opens both eyes now, staring into the mirror. Somewhere where nobody cares if I know the color of the praetor's underwear. You smile. You'd miss it. Of course I would, she says, laughing. I'm dramatic, not delusional. You finish her trim. The layers fall just right. She looks softer now, but no less sharp, like a velvet dagger. She inspects herself, then places a small jar on your counter for your back. You frown. It's balm, she explains. You've been standing funny. You blink. You hadn't even noticed, but she did. Of course she did. She stands, smoothing her tunic. Oh, she adds, pausing at the curtain. Don't eat the dates from Marcus the fruit seller. They're hiding something in them. What? Pine nuts. That's not a crime. They're pre-chewed. She disappears. You pick up the balm, uncork it. Smells like mint and eucalyptus and something. Else? Wisdom, maybe. You place it gently on the shelf, next to the old soldier's button. Outside, the last light of day is beginning to stretch across the rooftops. People are closing shutters. The pigeons are quieter. The heat is breaking. You sit, you breathe, and once again, you're still holding the blade. She doesn't knock. She never does. The curtain parts like a stage opening, and in she strolls, red hair like torchlight, gold bangles chiming softly with every step, and a smirk that says she's already won the argument you haven't had yet. Her name is Syra. Officially, she's an entertainer. Unofficially, she's the reason several magistrates go home smelling faintly of rose oil and regret. She throws herself into your chair with practiced flair, her sandals slipping off like they've fled out of self-preservation. I need waves, she says. You arch an eyebrow. The gentle kind or the goddess of the sea just rose from the foam kind? She grins. Venus-level drama. Make it look like Aphrodite got jealous. You reach for your iron, a cruel-looking thing you heat in a small brazier tucked in the corner. No plugs, no switches, just flame, time, and a steady hand. And a prayer to not burn someone's scalp off. As you start, she begins talking. Of course she does. That's half the reason she's here. The other half is vanity, but the line between the two is blurrier than a senator's tax records. So, she says, I'm attending a poetry reading tonight. You grunt. You hate poetry. I hate bad poetry, she corrects. But this one might be tolerable. The writer only rhymes half the time, very avant-garde, or very lazy. Same difference, she purrs. You wrap a strand of her hair around the iron, counting the breaths. You know, she continues, I used to think I wanted to marry a poet. You gently release the curl. It springs like a coiled vine. Changed. Your mind? Definitely, I don't want to inspire poetry. I want to cause problems. You pause, turning the iron. Any particular problems in mind? She shrugs. There's a merchant. Imports pearls, widower, boring. But he has a villa with a fountain shaped like a hippocampus. And honestly, that's all I need right now. You nod. Solid reasoning. She shifts in the chair, stretching like a cat. You ever think about love? Sometimes. What's your type? You grin. The kind that pays on time. She laughs, a real one, deep and musical. Coward. So you asked, you reply, carefully twisting the next section. She grows quiet for a moment. Not her usual style. You ever worry, she says, eyes fixed on the mirror, that we're all just pretending? You pause. Pretending what? That? We're fine. That Rome isn't just slowly burning while we keep fixing our hair and throwing parties. You glance at her in the mirror. The woman who once claimed she'd seduced a priest just to prove she could. She looks tired, just for a second. You nod. Sometimes, another curl, another flick of the iron, but maybe that's the point, you add. We keep going. We keep styling the ruins. She tilts her head. That's poetic. Did you steal that? No, you smirk, but you can pretend I did. She smiles again. The real kind this time. The kind that makes her look less like a goddess and more like a girl who's learned how to survive. Historians still debate the role of courtesans in Roman society. Were they subversive agents of feminine power or just ornamentation in silk? But they never talk about this part, the quiet moment, the head tilted back, the hair curling into something deliberate, beautiful, chosen. You finish the last wave and step back. She inspects herself in the mirror. Perfect, she whispers. You're a magician. I'm a man with hot metal and good timing. She stands, slips her sandals back on with a flick of each foot, and digs into her sash. She doesn't pull out coins. Instead, she produces a small vial. Perfume, she says. Made it myself. Smells like figs, honey, and ambition. You accept it carefully. Powerful trio. Just don't spill it, she warns. Last time my neighbor thought it was a love spell and proposed to his horse. You nod solemnly. Rome is weird. She grins, leans in, and kisses you lightly on the cheek. Not flirtation, just thanks. As she disappears into the evening crowd, her curls bounce like sea foam, and her scent lingers in the air like a well-written secret. You place the vial on your shelf, next to the balm, next to the button. The sun is low now, casting everything in amber. You wipe your hands, and once again, you're still holding the blade. The sun is nearly gone. It drapes its last light lazily across the cobblestones, like a silk sash tossed from a noble's window. The street has quieted to a murmur. No more carts crashing into potholes. No more children screeching about marble, shards, or who stole whose fig. Even the pigeons are quieter, roosting with the self-importance only Roman pigeons seem to have. You lean in your doorway, watching the light fade. The wax bowl has cooled. The blade has dried. The curtain breathes softly behind you, swaying like a tired sigh. You're about to douse the oil lamp when you hear it. A voice. Low. Familiar. Still open. You turn. There he is. Your father. He's older now, of course. Grey streaks more prominent, eyes deeper set. But that posture, one part fatigue, two parts stubborn pride, is unmistakable. He hasn't been in your stall for years, not since the day you opened it. You say nothing, just step aside. He enters like a man walking into a shrine. His eyes flick across the walls, at the blades, the shelves, the gourd you use for rinsing. He grunts. That's his version of impressive. He sits in your chair like it still belongs to him. You don't ask what he wants, you just reach for the brush. He doesn't speak at first, just closes his eyes, jaw clenched, hands folded tightly, in his lap. You lather slowly, carefully, working in circles the way he taught you, when you were barely tall enough to reach the customer's chin without a stool. He finally speaks. You kept the strop, you nod. Still gives the best edge. Silence. Then, you move the oil jar. You smile. I like it on the left. He huffs, disapproving, familiar, comforting in a weird way. The blade glides across his cheek, pulling softly. You remember what I told you about shaving around the jugular, he mutters. Go slow, unless you're trying to solve a different kind of problem. He chuckles, dry as old parchment. You listened. Sometimes, another pass. You still nervous? He asks suddenly. You pause. About what? Cutting too close, saying the wrong thing, letting someone see too much. You think about it. Less than I used to. He nods just once. You finish the left cheek, switch sides. Outside, someone whistles a lullaby. Soft. off-key, the kind of song sung more to comfort the singer than the child. Your father exhales, long and low. "You know," he says, "when I left you the chair, I thought you'd last 3 months, maybe 4. You don't respond. But you made it yours." You blink. That might be the closest thing to pride he's ever said out loud. You rinse the blade. Wipe his chin. He opens his eyes. "I don't want to be remembered as a great barber," he says, "just as one who didn't mess it up too badly." You smile. "Then we're in the same club." He nods, stands, stretches like old leather pulled. From a trunk, you expect him to leave. Instead, he turns back, pulls something from his tunic, a stone. Smooth, worn flat. He sets it on your bench. "Sharpening stone," he says, "from my first stall." You pick it up. It fits your hand like it's always belonged there. "Use it," he says, "but don't grind too fast, makes the steel brittle." Then he leaves. Just like that. You sit in silence for a long time. The stone rests in your palm. You place it on the shelf next to the vial, the balm, the button. The oil lamp flickers gently. Outside, the stars begin to prick through the night sky like secrets escaping parchment. You reach for a cloth, clean your blade, fold it carefully, and once again, you're still holding it. Night has fallen completely now. Not the flickering kind of twilight, not the stubborn orange haze clinging to the rooftops, but the real thing, the deep blue-black Roman dark that wraps itself around every rooftop, every alley, every flickering oil lamp like a velvet curtain drawn slow. Your stall is quiet. The chair is empty. The street outside hums low like a sleeping lion, still powerful, still unpredictable, but dreaming for the moment. A soft breeze sneaks in through a crack in the curtain, carrying the smell of cooling stones, wet pottery, and that strange sweetness from the fig seller's cart, now half covered with canvas. You've extinguished the brazier, folded the towels, wiped down every blade. There's a peace in it, this ritual. Not the same as prayer, but close. A small acknowledgement to the tools that served you, to the people who sat here, to the stories they left behind, like loose hairs on the floor. You sit on the stool and let your shoulders drop. They've been tight all day. You reach for the balm Alia gave you, rub a bit into your lower back. The mint stings a little, but it helps. You glance at the shelf, the old soldier's button, Alia's perfume vial, the sharpening stone from your father, the balm, a peach pit. You don't remember saving that last one. Maybe you did. Maybe it just stayed. Each one a relic. Each one a proof that this day, this long, rambling, ridiculous day, mattered. And out there, in the sleeping city, the people you touched with your hands, your blades, your silence, they're carrying you with them in small ways, in clean cheeks, in curled hair, in conversations they'll have with someone else saying, "The barber said something funny today." Historians rarely write about this, about the people who notice but don't interrupt, who observe but don't command, the ones who see more faces in a day than most patricians meet in a year. You with your dull apron and sharp steel, you with your jokes and your steady fingers, you in your stall, barely more than 4 walls, but somehow larger than the Senate when it matters. You close your eyes for a moment and you hear it, the street breathing, not loudly, not urgently, just alive. A pottery clink in the distance, a dog shifting in sleep, 2 lovers whispering beneath, a balcony too quietly to hear the words. This is the sound of Rome at rest, not the parades, not the riots, not the speeches or the statues, but this. And you? You are exactly where you need to be, not important in any grand way, but necessary. As the oil lamp flickers one last time and the shadows stretch longer than the city itself, you whisper to the empty chair, "You did good today." You don't. Say who you mean. Maybe the chair, maybe yourself. The wind answers gently, rustling the curtain as if agreeing. You rise, tie the curtain shut, secure the tools, leave the shelf as it is. Then you step outside, into the night, into the hum. And finally, you let go of the blade. The breeze softens. The light thins. Even your heartbeat seems to slow. There's nothing more to do now, no more hair to cut, no more stories to catch, only dreams to drift toward. Let them come. Let them carry you, past the stones, past the market, past the edge of the empire, into that quiet place where memory becomes sleep and sleep becomes something softer than silence. Good night, Barber of Rome. Good night, listener. Good night, dear friend.